Hi guys, welcome to the Fifth Skeptic, and today we have a very special episode for you. So I have my brother Utsav. He's going to be talking to us about veganism. So I was going to tell you about his vegan journey, but I'll just let him do that. So Utsav, why don't you tell everyone how long have you been vegan, and what brought about this change?
So I've been vegan for about a little less than a year now. Before that, I was a heavy meat eater. Didn't eat a very diverse diet, just mostly meat in my diet. Um, what made me make the change was kind of like I was living with this cognitive dissonance as to, on one hand, I knew that animal suffering was bad and I don't want to be causing it. But on the other hand, I was still eating meat. There was kind of that degree of separation between actually killing the animal and then consuming it. Um, and then one day I just decided I didn't want to live with that moral kind of imbalance in my life, and I decided to switch to vegan lifestyle.
So tell us more about what your lifestyle was prior to this. So you said you ate a lot of meat. What kind of training did you do? What kind of sports are you into?
Yeah, so I started lifting about 7 or 8 years ago. That was like the big period of my life when fitness became a big part of my life. I started off with a bunch of bodybuilding kind of weightlifting and then powerlifting. At my peak, I was about 125 kilos. I was just eating everything. I was eating crap, mostly meat-related crap. Then over time, I got into jiu-jitsu and MMA. So I currently practice Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu, and then I lift about once or twice a week as well.
So would you say that the major reason that you shifted to veganism was more ethical, philosophical? Is that what I'm gathering?
So I mean, that was definitely the main driving force for me. Currently, there's three forces that's keeping me vegan. The main force is definitely morality. I don't believe in producing unnecessary suffering in the world, and I feel like by being vegan, I'm kind of living with that philosophy. Veganism goes kind of beyond diet. It's a general life philosophy where you decide, okay, unnecessary suffering is bad, and I try my best to avoid that unnecessary suffering. But beyond that, now there's also the environmental argument, because animal agriculture is one of the leading causes of carbon pollution and global warming. So if a lot of people were to switch to a vegan lifestyle, we would see an impact on the environment. And then finally, there is some evidence, which we will talk about in a bit as well. There's some evidence that it might be a healthier diet for you as well, as far as longevity goes, as far as performance goes.
So returning again, I want to return to the philosophical argument, and I want to understand. You said it's unnecessary suffering, but some people would argue that it's a necessary suffering. It's sustenance. Human beings are omnivores. We need to eat meat for sustenance. What would you say to people who say that kind of stuff?
So yes, this kind of conflates the argument. On the one hand, yes, food is necessary, but on the other hand, animal food is not necessary. So I think it's wrong to say that animal agriculture is necessary, because the American Dietetics Association, which is one of the world's largest organizations of health and nutrition specialists, have made an official statement saying that a vegan or plant-based diet is adequate and is appropriate for all stages of life, including adolescence or pregnancy. So when you remove the necessity of it, like we don't need animal products in our life for our daily sustenance, then it becomes a choice. And when it becomes a choice, what we're basically saying, when you consume meat, what you're basically saying is that I value my sensory pleasure that I'm depriving for this. Or let's say it's more convenient for you to eat meat. That convenience factor, that sensory pleasure, is worth more than an entire life worth of suffering for that animal.
So, but people who say we as consumers, we eat the meat once it reaches our plate, right? We're not part of the process of killing. We're not there actually. Please harm the animals. And I'm sure if you ask a majority of meat eaters, like, if the suffering and all that could be avoided, would you prefer it that way? And I'm pretty sure most meat eaters would say yes. If you could do it without the suffering, it's fine. But do you think? It mitigates the moral responsibility because you're just having it on your plate, whereas you're not actually participating in the killing, nor are you desiring the killing.
So I don't know how that changes anything, whether you desire it, or whether you say you desire it or not. You do desire it because you do go and purchase those products. By purchasing those products, you are contributing to it. If you stop buying it, it's simple economics. If you stop creating the demand for it, the supply for it will dry out as well. Right? So the only reason why there are people, if not the shitty people who are in the slaughterhouses killing people, they're just doing their job. They're just trying to make money. It's us consumers who are incentivizing them to do that. So I think it's just as morally reprehensible to be sitting in the comfort of your home and having someone else kill that animal for you. Just like it's just as morally reprehensible to have a hitman kill someone for you, right? That's still murder. in the law we still treat that as you killed that man because you hired someone else to do it. So I don't think you can just remove all sort of moral agency by just sitting back and saying someone else is doing it.
And you see a lot of vegans talk about it. They compare how we treat animals to how slavery used to happen, and how at the time it was sort of deemed as like it was morally acceptable at the time that it took place. But now when we look back in hindsight, it just seems absolutely morally reprehensible. Like, do you think that analogy is fair when you compare it to meat?
I definitely think so. So Peter Singer actually coined the term speciesism, which goes off the way racism works. And how racism worked was there was this one society that would create this arbitrary circle saying that we assign moral agency to these people who happen to be, let's say, white people, and black people don't have moral agency. And it kind of works like that in speciesism as well, where human beings are saying these are human beings, so that's why we assign them moral value. But these are animals who we don't, just because they're a different species. And it's a completely arbitrary line to draw, just like it's an arbitrary line to draw between blacks and whites. It's similarly arbitrary to draw it between a human being or a cow. We both are capable of suffering, so I think we should assign moral agency to both parties.
But well, then that begs the question that where does that moral agency stop? Where do you draw the line? Because I guess even a plant is a living being or an insect is a living being. Where do you draw the moral line?
My personal view on morality is, regardless of whether you think morality is subjective or objective, I think we can all agree that unnecessary suffering is bad. So that's the basic premise of all my arguments. Sorry, what was the question again?
So basically, I was asking that you said you can't to say that you draw the line at a species is like you say okay, the species are less than humans, so it's okay to cause them suffering. I said, but then where do you draw the line? Because even a vegan is eating plants or other living beings, or like there's like a gray area, say insects. Where do you draw the line? Like I've heard some people talk about, say, sentience, the kind of how we relate to the emotional suffering of another animal. So we say like you feel more emotionally attached to a dog because it's your dog and you see them living, you see their suffering, so you're more attached. So when people like us see people like the Yulin Dog Festival where people are eating dogs, we completely flip out like, oh my god, how can they do that? It's savage. Because a dog is an animal we relate to very tightly, and then there'll be other mammals who are further away. And the further away they are from us in similarities, it seems to be like we care less and less. So where would you say that line gets drawn, or is there no line? Or yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if there's like a solid line to be drawn at a particular point. I think the issue comes up when we talk about suffering. I think the pertinent element that pertinent similarity between the species is the ability to suffer, right? Because to cause suffering to something that can't suffer it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't have any sort of, if you go and kick like a piece of wood lying on the floor, that doesn't have any morality attached to it, because there's no one suffering because of it. So when people say it's my choice to eat animals, that completely ignores the externalities of the suffering that you're causing to others. But yes, it is your choice to kick that plank of wood, and if it's not affecting anyone, yes, then we allow you to do that because there are no negative externalities. So as far as line drawing goes, I think the line's going to keep expanding as we realize more species are capable of suffering. But currently, that doesn't mean that just because there is a grey area doesn't mean that we should ignore the area that's not grey. We have one area that's very, very red that's saying yes, these beings are capable of suffering. And just because there's a grey area, we can't say why should we draw the line? Just because there has to be a line that may eventually have to be drawn.
So if I understand it correctly, what you're saying is that you're not actually drawing a line, but what we're doing to animals is obviously abhorrent. Like whatever we're doing to these animals is obviously on that side of the line.
Yeah.
And to make this sort of broader moral argument doesn't negate the fact that we are killing animals in a terrible way. And if you show anyone, say, a video of this, and even a meat eater, the most ardent meat eater, if you go and show them a video of how cows are slaughtered or how pigs are kept in tiny cages, they can't watch the video. I mean, I've been there, and you and I have been over this debate a few times, and that's why now for me, I'm sort of going majority pescatarian, and the reason for that is because I find that my detachment or my ability to understand the suffering of, say, a fish species is a little bit too far. Now that might evolve for me, and I could see potential for me changing my mind about that. But right now, when I find it very hard to associate to the suffering of, say, a fish, whereas compared to a mammal, I actually understand the way they feel pain. Like when you see a calf removed from the mother, you feel that pain because you understand it. However, when you see a fish flopping, I feel like it's more disgust for me. Maybe it's because I'm not as developed or haven't reached that far yet. But I see your point that in the sense that what we're doing in the meat industry is obviously on that side of the line, so we shouldn't just say, oh, because it's impossible to draw a line, that we ignore what's obvious to us.
Yeah, like a lot of people make this absolute bullshit argument that, oh, how do you know plants don't suffer? Well, we don't have evidence to show that they do suffer, but we do have evidence to show that that cow you're eating does suffer. So just because we don't know whether plants suffer or not, doesn't mean that we can't cause suffering to the things that we do know suffer. Right? You can't just say that we don't know this, that's why forget about all of this.
Okay, that's very interesting. I think that philosophical argument again with morality is always, people can always throw in their own little 2 cents, but what about this? There's always ifs and buts, but some things are obvious, and I don't think those should be ignored in the way that they are these days. So actually now let's move past the philosophical argument, because I feel like we could just go in circles over this forever and ever. Like it's a never ending thing. You and I have sparred at this enough already. So let's talk about the nutrition argument. So why don't you tell people how you have physically changed, how you physically felt since you've gone vegan, since you stopped consuming animal products?
So, I mean, overall, I feel much better. From a purely subjective point of view, I have more energy. My gastrointestinal health feels better, and those are probably connected. I probably have more energy because of better gastrointestinal health. It's a larger amount of fiber, the less animal fat to digest. So I feel better that way. Additionally, I always had joint inflammation issues with jiu-jitsu, the constant hyperextension of the arm. I had tennis elbow and golfer's elbow in both my elbows, and I've had it for quite a few years, and until I went vegan, and a couple of months in, I noticed that I completely stopped having those issues. And there have been a lot of studies linking animal protein consumption to inflammation in the body. Beyond that, from a more objective point of view, I actually got my blood work done a couple of months ago, and my numbers were really good. Specifically, my LDL cholesterol, which is bad cholesterol, was really high when I was on my meat diet. A couple of years ago, when I got my A to Z checkup done, the doctor said, this is on the upper limit, you're fine, but just keep an eye on it. And then this time when I went in, my LDL cholesterol just completely dropped, and my HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol, and has a negative relationship with heart disease. So the higher HDL cholesterol, the lower likelihood of heart disease. My HDL cholesterol is actually really high. So even from an objective point of view, it was pretty good, yeah. From like my sports and my lifting perspective, I'm still making good gains. My cardio is getting better. Again, from a subjective point of view, I feel like I'm recovering better. I don't want to necessarily say it's because of the vegan diet, but I do feel like I'm recovering better. At the gym, I'm getting stronger. Jiu-jitsu, I'm getting better. When I'm running, my cardio is getting better. So I feel really good. And from like a body perspective,
yeah, I think that's what our viewers be most interested in. Yeah. How has it affected your body fat percentage, your muscle mass, all that stuff? Because I think that's one of the main concerns with people thinking they're going to lose all their muscle when they go vegan, or how will they, get lean.
So I mean, that's completely unfounded. Ever since I've been vegan for just under a year now, and my body composition has completely changed. I haven't dropped a substantial amount of weight, but the amount of fat that my body holds has dropped. Again, I don't know why exactly that is. There are some studies that show that animal fat does linger in the body for longer. But yeah, my body composition is great as well.
Yeah, actually, I mean, even I've noticed, the last time you came home and you were like heavy into meat, you came like 110, 120 kilos with like a massive beard. I was like, yeah, you're not gonna lie, you kind of look like a terrorist. I don't even know how they let you on the flight. But yeah, this time, since you've been, vegan for how long now?
Just under a year.
Yeah, this is probably the leanest I've ever seen you, which is actually one of the reasons why I'm sort of shifting towards a more plant-based diet. Like, I saw what he looked like and I was like, it's not bad. Like, his abs were popping and, he had striations I hadn't seen in ages. So that gave me a little bit of hope. So moving on now, let's address some of the specific concerns that people have when they're thinking of shifting to like a vegetarian diet, and the number one obviously aspect of that is going to be protein. Aap protein kahan se khate hain? Please tell people about what are the protein needs, how are you meeting those needs, and generally like people think that you need to be eating say 2 grams per pound of body weight and all that. It's very hard to get that in a vegan diet. So just share your thoughts on that.
So, firstly, as a society, we kind of overvalue protein. There is something known as too much protein. It's very heavy on your kidneys, it's high in toxicity. So, I would say you can eat too much protein. As far as actual guidelines, how much to eat, it's going to vary. I personally follow the guidelines that are on the Game Changers website, and they also, I feel like they're on the upper limit of things. But I tend to eat 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of lean muscle mass.
Okay.
So on the daily, I eat between 100 to 140.
So lean muscle mass, you mean basically the muscle you have without the body fat?
Yeah. So I mean, the math that I do is I take my weight and I subtract out my body fat percentage from that. So I weigh at about 85 kilos. I estimate my body fat at about 9 to 10%. So I just subtract that out and multiply the number by 1.6 to 2.0. And that's the range I try to hit. Even if it goes down to like 1.2 to 2.0, I think it's fine. I personally feel like my recovery is just as good. I still make good gains. Yeah.
So what are the kinds of things you eat? Because even that's quite a fair bit of protein. Like how are you getting that in? And could you also talk about how important protein shakes are? That because I get a lot of specific questions like, do I need to have a protein shake if I'm vegan? And the usual answer I give is no. You never need to have a protein shake, no matter you're vegan or not. You can always compensate to eat for that, but how much do you have to eat to compensate for that? Or you use a protein shake, yes?
I do. So, I mean, I do want to talk about my supplementation later as well.
Yeah.
And the way I look at supplementation is somewhat as a sort of insurance. I try to get all my foods from a whole food diet, which is the healthiest way to go about it. But I know that people are busy. Like, I'm in law school as well. I have busy days. And the days I don't get enough protein, and I'll have a shake or I'll have a protein bar. But those are ultra processed, and they just shouldn't be your primary source.
So yeah, tell more about the primary sources of protein that you use. Like you're in LA, you have, so if you could give different perspectives, because you're in LA as well, where I'm sure the variety of vegan food you have available is much more than what you can get here. But you've been back for a few months now and you've still been vegan and you come back. So can you just give like different perspective of say someone is somewhere where there's an abundance of vegan food, what kind of stuff can they eat? Or someone who's in say our current situation in India, what kind of food should they be looking to add in their diet? And you know what can they replace in the diet as well? Like, you know, if I'm sure they're eating a lot of food already, they'll have to take some things out to add some things because vegan food isn't very calorie dense. And if you want to hit your nutrition requirements, you might have to eat large quantities of food. Could you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I first want to address the thing you talked about, it not being as calorically dense. That is true, and that's one major issue that a lot of people have going into a vegan diet. They don't realize they still eat the same quantity of food, but since it's less calorically dense because the fat content is less, they consume less calories, they lose weight, and then they feel lower energy, and they quit the diet saying this is crap. So when you do switch to a vegan diet, keep track of what you're eating. Make sure you're eating enough calories. Make sure you're getting your fats in. As far as protein sources go, I mean, Indian food, there's just so many protein sources. You have your legumes, like your lentils, your beans. That's mostly where I get my protein in from. And it's as simple as, okay, I'm eating a salad, I'll just open a can of beans and throw some beans on top. Or I'm eating like my meals, I'll have like some stewed lentils on the side.
Like dal and rajma and chana. You have all those types of those curry type foods in India that taste quite good, and I think a lot of Indians do eat vegetarian, but they kind of ignore adding these in larger quantities, especially when you're vegan.
You just have to up your intake in certain things. Like if you used to eat like, let's say, rajma chawal with some chicken on the side, maybe cut down on the chicken. Maybe instead of the rice, what you can do is put quinoa. Quinoa is slightly higher in protein than rice is. Eat some more beans, make it less watery so that you have more actual kidney beans in your rajma. That'll up your protein intake. So it's a little tweaks in life. When you think about the idea of protein, most people think of meat. So which is why when you talk about getting meat out of your diet, they're panicking, oh, where am I going to get the protein from? But you don't realize that some of the vegetables you eat, the grains you eat, all the side dishes that you're eating, they're packed with protein. You just need to up their intake.
And what about more specific deficiencies like the B vitamins and stuff like that? You know, a bunch of people have made arguments that you get your B vitamins from your meats, and how does someone on a vegan diet compensate for that? Or please just add more on that.
So actually, vitamin B12 is the only vitamin that you can't get from a purely plant-based diet. I kind of want to touch upon why that is. It's because the way agriculture has evolved, we use a lot of pesticides and herbicides on our grains and on our crops, and so B12 is produced by this bacteria that's usually on the crops. But when you spray them with a bunch of chemicals, it completely kills that bacteria, which is why most plants that you buy these days aren't going to have B12 in them. Now, why we get it from meat is firstly that it's produced in the stomach of some animals, and they get it from like the ground or they're grazing in grass. But then again, most meat that you eat is not grass-fed, so they have to be given a vitamin B12 supplement as well. So actually, vitamin B12 is something everyone should be supplementing with. But if you are on a vegan diet, yes, I would add that to your supplement stack, just because that's the only thing that, as long as you're eating a varied diet, you get everything else, but you can't get enough B12 from whole foods.
So what I'm getting from this is basically on a vegan diet, you got to adapt somehow the way you eat. So let me just summarize what you said. You should be wary of how many calories you're eating, because vegan diet is less calorie dense. So all of a sudden your calories could drop, and that could affect you. You talked about vegan sources of protein, and then you talked about how the B vitamins right now, and how it's not really an issue to get them in, and supplementation is sort of like your backup, even though because you don't actually feel it's nutritionally deficient. So I guess those are some of the important questions regarding veganism itself. But now I want to kind of ask you about what you think of meat. Like, what is your perspective on meat? Do you think it's unhealthy? Or is this just an ethical shift and you're sort of compromising a little bit on health to be, say, morally coherent with how you, on your perspective on the world?
So I definitely think eating meat is unethical. I think veganism is like a moral baseline, so I do think it's unethical to eat meat. But beyond that, I'm starting to believe that it might be unhealthy as well. Because if you look at the vast majority of even omnivore nutritionists who kind of advocate an omnivore diet, also say you should get a majority of your calories, a majority of your nutrition from plant-based sources.
People like Chris Kresser and like a bunch
Exactly.
of debates that I've
People who
watched.
say that meat is essential would agree that we're still talking about a mostly plant-based diet.
Okay.
And then when you have statements saying that a plant-based diet is adequate, the question is why not just switch completely when the moral question comes in. As far as what I think about the health of meat, when you look at the videos of these animals in the animal farms and the factory farms, it's really quite miserable. They live in these small, cramped up cages. The cages are barely clean. They're basically swallowing their own feces. They get infections and they get pumped with antibiotics and they get pumped with hormones, and eventually when that reaches your plate, I can't imagine that's good for you. Maybe if you're eating grass-fed beef, then we could talk about whether animal protein is good for you or not. But if you're eating factory farm food, I can straight up say that just the conditions that these animals are living in, it can't be healthy when it comes into your body.
Also, like, you hear stories of, say, antibiotics being fed to these animals, and like the wider implications of that, say, antibiotic-resistant viruses. I mean, we're talking about coronavirus right now that has come from animals, and most of our major diseases come from animals, and there's obviously a serious issue with these animals being pumped with antibiotics and then them developing antibiotic-resistant strains of viruses and all kinds of infectious diseases. What do you have to say about that?
So that's one of those externalities that's created by consuming animal products. Obviously, on the one side you have the suffering of the animals, but on the other side you have the impact on the environment and the potential for these antibiotic-resistant strains of diseases. The most antibiotics used in the world is not for human beings, it's for animals. And when it goes into their system and you're consuming that, you're basically consuming, well, I don't want to say exactly consume that, but when you're using antibiotics on such a large scale, you're bound to create antibiotic-resistant strains of diseases that can come to us human beings. And that we will be seeing in the next couple of decades, unfortunately. We will be seeing a lot of antibiotic-resistant strains that come from animal agriculture. And that's one of those externalities you have to consider.
So yeah, like I don't have that many more questions left, so I'm just gonna give you the floor now. If there's anything I wasn't able to question you on and you want to cover, and like this is your chance. Go make your argument to people, because you've sort of convinced me. Like, I'm on my journey to converting over to mostly plant-based. As I said, I'm already majority pescatarian. I do allow myself, like if I go out for a meal or something, I really feel like it, I do treat myself. But at home, me, my father, and my mother, we're all primarily now eating pescatarian and slowly cutting down our meat consumption. So here's your chance of giving you the floor. Open up. Just talk about all the things in veganism that you think viewers should be aware of.
I would just say consider the implications of what you consume. Every single time you're consuming milk or you're consuming some sort of animal product, you're basically telling those farmers that what you're doing to these animals is okay. And you're saying, you know what, we want you to continue doing this. We're all decent human beings. None of us want unnecessary suffering in the world. But since this is something that societally, on a societal level, is accepted, we kind of look past it. We don't think about these things. We don't wallow in these things because we don't have to. It's much easier living in the blissful ignorance of not knowing what's happening to these animals. So I would implore you to watch documentaries like Dominion. Yeah, Dominion's actually a really moving one where they go inside factory farms and you can really see where food comes from. I showed my dad Dominion, and he watched the part where pork comes from, and since then he's completely stopped eating pork. He's trying to cut down meat in general, but when you see what these animals go through, I think any decent human being would start questioning their choices. Now, why a lot of people are afraid to live with this moral consistency is because they don't know a diet beyond meat. We kind of meat becomes a centerpiece of everything we know about food, and to step away from that, I think it takes courage and it takes knowledge. So just reach out to sources that can help you out. I'll give Ishan a couple of sources to put in the description below that you can check out that'll help you transition to a vegan diet. But also feel free to reach out to me. I'm always open to talk to people about the morality of it, or talk to you about the health of it, help you make the transition, talk about little tricks that can help out, and just take baby steps. Try to cut down on meat once a week, cut down twice a week, and over time it gets easy. Like I went cold turkey, but you don't have to do that. Just try your best to cut down your consumption, and I think we can make the world a better place that way.
So yeah, I see your point about active ignorance, about people should actually go out, watch these documentaries, learn where their food comes from, and not just live in this blissful ignorance of, oh, I have a steak on my plate. Like, do you know what that steak is? It's part of an animal. How it came to being, how many sacrifices were made for that, how much water was used to feed that animal, how that animal was treated through its lifetime, how its life was taken away even before it had an opportunity, and even whatever little bit of life it had, it was in this minute cage where we just completely ignore that aspect of it because you see this beautiful looking steak on your plate. So yeah, that's the point. Like, to be just ignorant of it is it's morally irresponsible. And taking that from Utsav's point, go educate yourself, go see how it's done. And if after that you still feel like you're okay with it, that's your prerogative. But to just be ignorant and be like, oh, I don't want to see that. I just eat. I don't want to. I feel like that's highly irresponsible, and that's where the issue is. So yeah, that was our talk on veganism. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope it's got your brain thinking about these sort of issues, because I can assure you, until about him coming up, both of us used to just, like, every time we talked about vegans, you would just be like, oh, those damn vegans, and then just you'd see protests, and like you just watch all the shitty ones, like someone outside trying to shut down a restaurant or something like that. And you just put all the vegans in this broad category and say, oh, you bloody vegan. And I think it's unfair to categorize people like that. Try and listen to their arguments, try and deal with them on an individual level, and don't take the worst of a group of people and use that against them and say, okay, all vegans are like this. That's unfair. So yeah, open up your mind, open up your ears, listen, open up your eyes, have a look around. And if you have any questions, just put them in the comment section. I'll forward them to Utsav. I'll add some contact details for his if anyone wants to get in touch with him directly and ask him about veganism. I'm also again shifting to majority plant-based diet, so I'll be tracking that in my videos. And I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. We'll see you at the next one. This is Ishan from The Fit Skeptic, and that's Utsav Lal. Thanks.